Don't set yourself up just to get into law school and then decide later, oh, maybe I want to do something else, and then you're stuck with a degree that maybe is not going to give you opportunities that you wanted. So just keep that in mind too. Hey, so I get a lot of questions on what the best major for getting into law school is, so I thought I'd do a quick video and do a little bit of a rundown on majors and getting into law school. First, let me start with a general disclaimer. There's no such thing as the best major to get into any law school. If you want to get into Yale, if you want to get to Harvard, your best regional school near you, there's no such thing as doing one type of major that's going to set you up for success. That said, we're going to talk about some of the factors that admissions offices look at and how we can use those factors to better cater your choosing your major to get into the best law school that you want. But there's no such thing. I want to make that very clear. As a threshold matter, the first thing you need to keep in mind when you're choosing a major is that law school admissions offices look at your GPA and your LSAT as your two primary factors in whether to admit you. And so getting the good GPA, that's going to be your goal here. And you should keep that in mind when you're deciding what major you want to take, because obviously harder majors are going to be more difficult to get a good GPA. Easier majors may be a little bit easier. And the better GPA that you have on average, the better law school you're going to get into. Of course, there are some caveats, and we'll talk about that, but that's a threshold matter you should keep in mind. Okay, so let's talk about actual majors now. If I were back in time, or for example, what I tell my mentees right now, who are trying to get into the best law schools they can, they're an undergrad, they know they want to go to law school, best major you can do, balances the GPA and your interests, probably political science. Because political science tends to be relatively easier major in terms of reading and writing. It's right up your alley for law school in terms of what you're learning. You're learning about government, legislation, in some cases the Constitution. And usually, if you're interested in law school and law in general, the content in political science is going to be right up your alley, so you're going to enjoy the work and you're really going to like it. Now, there's a couple caveats to political science that you should keep in mind. First, job opportunities not going to be the best ever out of undergrad if you don't go to law school, because political science, it's a great major, it's not the most quantitative. So I think folks who I know who went into poli-sci, they tend to work in governments as staffers, do internships, maybe go into the business side of tech startups, but you're not going to get the sexiest job opportunities. Just keep that in mind. Doesn't matter if you want to go to law school, but just something to keep in mind. On the same note as political science, I think political economy, international relations, the economics of developing world, all of these sort of soft social sciences that are similar to political science, I think you can treat similarly for our purposes here, because they tend to be majors, and this depends on the school, this depends on the department. You should do your research before you choose, but these tend to be programs where you can get a better GPA on average than some of the more difficult majors like computer science, psychology, maybe even economics, which is what we're going to talk about next. I get the question a lot of, is finance, economics, or business, accounting, any of these things in the business realm, are those good majors for pre-law? And the answer is absolutely yes. I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier in the video though, which is you should be careful with your GPA. Because in these majors, it's a little bit harder to get a top GPA depending on the program, and of course we want to maximize the GPA. However, the big positive with the business side majors is that you have job opportunities right out of the gate from undergrad. If you decide maybe you want to take some time off between going to law school, maybe you say you don't want to go to law school. I was an economics major, and I had job opportunities if I really wanted them right out of undergrad because I had that economics degree, and I don't think I would have had the same sorts of opportunities if I were political science. So I think the short answer here is they're great majors, really good stuff that you learn, probably going to be a little more difficult than the softer majors like political science, but your job opportunities are probably going to be better if you later decide you don't want to go to law school. I want to address one thing real quick here, which is that if you want to do patent prosecution, the type of law where you're working directly with inventors and entrepreneurs to create a patent submitted to the US Patent Office, you do need a more technical background in your undergraduate degree, or you need to get a master's or a PhD in something in the hard sciences. Molecular cell biology, computer science, engineering, right? Anything that is very quantitative, so to speak, and in the STEM field typically helps. You're basically going to be counted out of doing patent prosecution work if you don't have a technical degree, because a lot of the work does require having a technical background, and law firms very much look for that when they're vying for the best applicants for the patent prosecution roles. In the same vein, sometimes folks ask about engineering or computer science or these technical majors and whether they confer any sort of benefit before you go into law school or into the admissions process. And the answer here is that you may get some slight boost in your application profile if you did computer science as a major. Let's say you had a 3.5 and you're comparing yourself to an applicant with a 4.0 in political science. Well, the admissions offices might look at you and say, okay, you had a 3.5 in computer science, but we know that that's more difficult, so we're going to give you maybe a bump. We're going to assume you got a 3.7, right? So there's some leverage there that you have, but by and large, Admissions offices, in my opinion, are going to just be very cursory in how they review these applications. And the number is going to be more important than the overall holistic review. So I think if you know you want to go to law school, just be a little bit careful, because the hard majors don't really give you a tangible benefit. It certainly isn't going to really help when you go into law school, because when you go into law school, you're not doing coding, you're not doing sciences, you're doing reading and researching and writing of these cases. And so there's no real tangible benefit unless you want to keep the option open to do, let's say, coding down the line for computer science. Then great, do it. You can decide if you want to go to law school later, but if you know you're going to law school, just be a little bit careful, okay? Now, I do want to address one thing, which is that we haven't discussed a lot of these majors like history, English, rhetoric, philosophy, ethnic studies, just the whole gamut of softer science majors that exist out there. And here's how I want you to think about these majors. It's the same logic that we discuss with political science as applied to these majors. If you can get a good GPA, send it, right? If you're interested in it and you think you can get a good GPA, even better. But realistically, it doesn't really make a huge difference if you're doing rhetoric versus political science, if you're doing political science versus political economy versus English versus history. At the end of the day, you got to do something you enjoy and you got to get good grades. Also keep in mind what job opportunities are out there for you if you decide you don't want to go to law school, right? Don't set yourself up just to get into law school and then decide later, oh, maybe I want to do something else, and then you're stuck with a degree that maybe is not going to give you opportunities that you wanted. So just keep that in mind too. Before I let you go, I want to give you one other piece of advice, and this is something that I get asked about a lot, is there any major that's going to give you the best run at law school by way of being prepared? Or better preparing your mindset for going to law school? And honestly, my answer here is there's really no such thing, because law school curriculum is very insulated to the law school career, right? You're reading cases, you're analyzing them, you're taking notes, you're doing some research and writing. So you could argue that there are things like the soft skills, like research and writing, like that's always going to be helpful to learn about, right? But at the same time, analytical reasoning and analytical thinking are also very important. And those tend to be, those research and writing, analytical thinking and reasoning can be kind of hard to find all of those things in one major in undergrad, but ultimately you're going to thrive in law school based on how hard you work in law school. And there's not going to be any major out there, for better or for worse, that's going to give you a leg up or a leg down in that process. So pick something that you enjoy, do your best, and know that our community has your back no matter what. That's it for me, guys, but thank you for your time, and make sure to like, subscribe, as always, show me some love if you feel like it, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks.